guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for Eden Zero, Chapter 97. Okay, so before getting anything else major, can we take a moment and appreciate just how, to once again appreciate how meticulously planned Draken Joe's whole operation really is? Because even though he probably knew it would turn him into a monster, he still had a failsafe in the event that his life support machine would be, destroyed, hacked. And it truly puts into perspective that what makes Draken Joe such a threatening villain isn't so much his power, but his ability to in order to pre-plan for every in order to take into account every freaking scenario. Of course, at the same time, the chapter also kind of reinforces that it. At the same time, the chapter reinforces that it's also. The chapter also reinforced that it also showed just how desperate he is to obtain the Cat Leaper, because as Hermit explained, this very much with the whole thing of Draken Joe having these small devices planted around Belial Gore in order to continuously absorb life energy from people. It very much has the vibe of a last ditch effort, and this current situation is probably a scenario Draken wanted to avoid the most, but basically because of everything, it's something he couldn't avoid either. I think it's also worth noting that even though Joe has clearly lost his mind, you can still tell he's held on to enough of his sanity to still know what his main priorities are. He still sees Rebecca as the main objective, as the main target. He still sees her as I need the Cat Leaper. I need it in order to keep living and surviving. So yeah, in that sense, it's one of those things where it is interesting to see that even though he's clearly gone insane, he still has enough of his sanity left in order to know in order to know what he needs to do. Now, obviously, big thing to talk about with this is the end, where Shiki basically awakens his full power overdrive. And on top of the fact that the design in itself is just frighteningly badass, not to mention fitting for someone with the title of Demon King, but the circumstances by which the power activates is very poetic in the sense where the very situation that killed Shiki before now pretty much allowed him to awaken his power. And I know there are going to be people who are going to call this out on the power of friendship, but consider this if you will. Unlike last time where Draken Joe just basically killed Shiki effortlessly, this time around Shiki was not only allowed to fight Draken Joe, but the fight itself had already pushed Shiki's body to its near limitations, making it weirdly that much easier in order for Shiki to basically naturally tap into the overdrive power and prevent his death. Shiki's whole body and mind, it had been pushed so far that the added stress and the urgency of the situation is almost what kind of clicked and allowed and allowed him in order to awaken the power. So it isn't necessarily. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a friendship power up here. I see it more as basically as Shiki's body running on pretty much pure adrenaline at this point. It's pure adrenaline of facing down death is what caused him in order to awaken this power to begin with. And now, one concern I do admit I still have is how with Shiki having now awakened his overdrive power, I'm very uncertain of how this is going to affect Jin and Chris's involvement in the current situation, because again, with Shiki having awakened his overdrive, I don't know if Chris is gonna make that much of a difference now. If anything, I think Rebecca's probably gonna be put more center stage now. But I suppose one thing that we can probably I suppose one thing possibly that could happen from here is that even though Shiki has fully awakened the power, I think at least the next chapter or two is probably going to be focused on him learning in order to control the power. I think that is probably one way in which Mashima can kind of work around the whole thing of the whole thing of of basically of Jin, Chris, and Rebecca and Weiss, like pretty much still all needing to in order to tag team Dragon Joe. Is that Shiki himself, even though he's awakened this great power, he probably won't have like full on control of it. Like he's gonna have to like pretty much take it as he goes and kind of and just learn how to use the power from as the fight progresses. That's the one scenario I can see happening here, but I don't know. It is kind of one of those where I'm just like, okay, it is one of those where I'm like, okay, Shiki's awakened this power. Are the others really needed at this point? But again, I think Mashima is gonna make this is gonna find a way in order to still make this work. I think. Um, with all that said, let's talk about the other big thing in this chapter, which is the super weapon Draken Joe stole from Kurenai, and how it's now aimed at Blue Garden with the intent of wiping out the entire planet and getting rid of Noah. And if I'm being honest, that is the part of the chapter with the least amount of suspense to it, because if Draken was specifically targeting Noah, with the beam, I might feel like I might feel a little more suspense and like, okay, this is gonna be a do or die similar situation to Valkyrie. Like it can go either way. Like Valkyrie, like from just Noah can die, or like Noah can die, or he can live. But that's kind of how I think it could go if he was just targeting Noah. But with but the fact that it's being targeted at the super weapon is being targeted at the entire planet itself, that's part of what takes away the suspense for me, because it does feel like more of a controlled situation that our heroes can prevent. And the only scenario in which I can see this possibly going extremely dark is if it goes the if Mashima ends up going down the Star Wars: A New Hope, like pretty much Alderaan's destruction route. That's the only way I see him following through with like Blue Garden's destruction. But aside from that, yeah, the whole situation feels like it can be somewhat resolved. um, Now, also one thing I think I definitely need to touch on from pretty much last weekend, and it's something that a commenter, of course, brought up, which is that when it comes to Weiss, I don't know what circumstance it's going to be, but it made me realize that the one important thing that really needs to happen with Weiss right now is that he does need to lose his arm. It is something that needs to happen here. In order to showcase that there are some things that pretty much can't be prevented in the future. Like that there's some things that can't be prevented. Something. No matter how much you change the future, there's always something that can't be changed. And again, I know I'm harping on it a lot, but that's kind of the one thing I'm hoping can't be changed, is that Weiss is still going to lose his arm in some way. And it made me realize that with Draken Joe becoming this kind of like this monster that does actually prevent the very interesting scenario in which Weiss can still lose his arm. So yeah. Also, even though it's a very small moment, I do like even though it's very small, I do like the moment of Sabir like saving Pino and her thanking him, because it shows that once again Pino is becoming more and more human, with her having these sort of very conflicting emotions about a person she originally hated, but is seeing him in a new light more and more, and that he wasn't necessarily as all that much of the evil human that she originally perceived him as, even if they were from both different Earths, I guess. Whether whether she realizes or not, and this is all happening whether she realizes or not, her she is becoming more human with by letting her kind of by letting her emotions more out with these conflicting emotions. It shows she's becoming more human. It one thing I do strangely have to give the chapter credit for again is it's, I don't know if I can call it smart use of fan service, but it's very creative use of fan service. Because while obviously the stuff with Draken Joe like pretty much wrapping his tentacles around everyone, and especially Rebecca and Homura, it did kind of border on the line of tentacle hentai, but it is also one of the things that does still work within the context of what Draken Joe has become, which is basically a life-absorbing monstrosity. So yeah, in that sense, it kind of walks the line, but it still works. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Crunchyroll. That Night of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.